Alright, so I am back with another chit chat, just me talking about, well, today I'm going to be talking about the 12th house in astrology in terms of the 12th house integration. Though, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, for those of you who may or may not know, but I have made a series on my channel and it's to do with the psychology behind the zodiac signs. And that was really in correlation with Carl Jung. So he talked a great deal about the shadow side, and essentially what this translates to is the unconscious. So Jung focused a lot of his work on exploring the unconscious. Now, I did also make a series about dreams within astrology in correlation with Sigmund Freud, and he was another person who really, both of these gentlemen, they dived into the human psyche, they dived into psychology. And with that series I made, it's coming up to about a year and a half ago now. I can't believe it's been that long since I made that. That's crazy. Wow. But I, of course, I've kept up with that. I've kept up with that ideology. I've kept up with those concepts and theories. And when I look at the birth chart, so for those of you who, if you want to, I'll basically tell you now what it is, but there is the 4th house in astrology, there's the 8th house and the 12th house. They're all water houses. They're all unconscious houses. Cancer rules the 4th, Scorpio rules the 8th, Pisces rules the 12th. And the 4th house is to do with our sort of conditioning, so our family conditioning, our family scripting, family upbringing, things like that. 8th house is to do really with the intimate relationships, so the deep intimacy that we form with our partner or with another person. Sorry, my phone went there. But essentially what the 8th house is, your shadow comes out because whatever you sort of developed or learnt in the 4th house within your chart, if they're not integrated into your conscious awareness, they can then come out through the 8th house. And if there are repressed emotions or anything, scorpionic things that, or Plutonian things that you keep under lock and you hide, they can be brought out into a intimate relationship with someone where you may project certain things onto or into that relationship, onto that person without realizing. But then it's that person that sort of brings it out of you. Hold on, I need to get my phone. Okay, sorry, so I just had to silence the phone there because I get easily distracted. So what I was saying there is to do with the intimate relationships that we bring into our lives. Now, there's a huge thing with this, right? The thing about the 8th house is, right, there's a big difference between the 7th and the 8th in that the 7th house is to do with your committed relationships. So it can be marriage, of course, it can be business partnerships. It's basically any relationship, also a friendship, any relationship that you may see or deem as long-term, that you may see as committed. Now, that could be through marriage, right? Could be through that, but it could also just be through a union. It could just be through an agreement. So it's agreements in the 7th house. You agree with another person, hey, we're doing this. Are you ready for this? We're going to do this. Yes, both agree. We are committed. We're in this together. That's why it's strongly connected with business partnerships, because there's contracts and things within business. So it's strongly represented with this agreeability between two people and this sort of union between two people, right? Now, with the 7th house, there can also be the unconscious things. So for example, your descendant rules the 7th. So your rising sign, yes, you have your rising, opposite is your descendant. So your ascendant / rising, your descendant. Now, that descendant sign, whatever sign rules your 7th house, those qualities or traits are usually going to come out through another person, okay? The reason why this is, guys, is because basically, right, try to think of people within your world as your mirror, okay? Try to think of people that you see out and about as reflections of you that you may identify with, you may not identify with. Someone could be reflecting a certain quality back to you and you think, I don't agree with that, I don't identify with that, I don't see that within myself. And that's okay, you don't see it. However, what could happen later down the line is this is where it gets interesting, is those very qualities that were reflected back to you from that other person, you then project it onto someone else. And then somebody else says to you, hey, why are you doing that? And you're like, I'm not like that. Ah, sure. No, it was this person who was like that. I'm not like that. Don't say that. And then the other person says, no, but you're doing it right now though. And you think, oh, no. So you can either go deny, 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 project, 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 or you can reflect on it and be like, that's kind of interesting, because I said the other week that I didn't like that in someone else, and now I'm here doing it. And that's the thing about the seventh, and the thing about our unconscious, and also the thing about integration, as I've been talking about. We will get to the 12th house. We're getting there. We're building up to it. But that is the thing about these qualities, these situations in our lives, because whilst we can say that we are not a certain way in one instance, if you really look back on your life, or you don't even know in the future, that you might be like that. You know, you might say, for example, I'm not very confident. I'm just not very confident. And then in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, all of a sudden you're gaining confidence and you're like, wow, I actually am a confident person. Or you might say, I'm not very punctual. Or opposite, I am very punctual. I'm extremely punctual. Then next thing you know, you're late twice to coffee with your friends. And then all of a sudden your friends are saying to you, you're not very punctual. And you think to yourself, but I was so punctual for years. What's going on? See, this is the thing about the seventh, guys, is that we use the other, as mirrors to show us the things that we like about ourselves, we don't like about ourselves, we like about them, we don't like about them because we don't see it within ourselves, or we do see it within ourselves. It's basically a house where this projection, reflection process happens. But the 8th house, okay, it is so much more magnetic, because the 8th house is this intense bond, okay? So you have this union, you have a marriage or a committed partnership, but then the 8th house comes along and it's to do with sex, it's to do with intimacy, it's to do with finances. So you're merging your finances with somebody else. I mean, the bank accounts and the money and everything, the property you own, if there's deaths in the family, you know, so your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, or your mother or your father, they die, and then it's like, well, who gets the inheritance money? All these things are in this 8th house, because they usually, within the sort of typical, I guess you could say, cycle of a human, those things occur later on in life, whenever you've been in a committed relationship. However, that's not to say that they won't occur before then, okay? It doesn't mean that it's just a complete straight line. Situations happen, especially with the 8th house, sudden deaths. You don't see it coming. So, with the 8th house, when it comes to this partnership, when it comes to a bond, there is the strong intimacy where you really do get under each other's skin. You know what I'm talking about? If any of you have been in a committed relationship for a few years, or whatever amount of time that you get really close with someone, you know yourself, if you're watching this, you know yourself the qualities that come out of you. You know yourself the qualities that come out of them, and the sudden explosions, and the angers, and the frustrations, and the you do my head in, like you do my head in, I can't stand you. Those things. So, in connection with the 4th house, the thing about the 8th house is that the things that you sort of were brought up to believe within this 4th house, or you were conditioned in a sense, they can be brought through into the 8th house, if not acknowledged, where you literally just project all your 4th house matters onto this person, and you think, oh my gosh, like, I can't stand this. And then whenever the other person starts maybe perhaps asking you, probing you, trying to investigate what's wrong, like, come on, tell me what's wrong, let's have a chat about this, then you sit down and it's as if they're your therapist. You literally, honestly, whenever you form such a union with someone, you become each other's therapists. That is the strength, the power that comes with a relationship, guys. That's how, it's how intense and amazing they can be, but also how breaking they can be. Because that stuff, all that stuff in your fourth house, whatever you've been through throughout your life, whatever you've experienced, it's all coming up into this eighth house with another person, and there's no going back. I mean, you can keep repressing it, but you know you do that, we get round 12th house. We have got this 12th house of the collective unconscious, which is about symbolism, it's about mythology, it's about archetypes, it's about stories and fantasy and film, movies, you know. So whenever you're watching the television, you're watching a movie, these are very 12th house matters, because you're looking into it and you're really seeing, you're somehow seeing yourself through this image that is in some way collectively connected with some sort of narrative, with a story that is telling you little snippets and little symbols about you. Now, it's not that we may not pay attention to them, right? So for example, right, let's say you are having major difficulties with your partner, and next thing you go and you watch a movie together with your partner, and in that movie the story consists or comprises of a similar theme, a very similar theme to what you and your partner are experiencing whilst you're watching the movie. Now, you may consciously grasp this and be like, hey, this is very similar to what I'm going through right now in my life. Or you might not. You may just think, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way life is. I mean, the movie just validates my whole experience. So, up with it, you know? That's just the way life is. Or you could watch it and you could think, you know what? I don't want that for myself. I know this is just a movie, right? It's not real. It's not real. But my life and my situation feels so real. So you know what? I can change this for myself. But again, it can be really difficult to do if you're not aware of what is being presented to you, and it can be difficult to grasp the messages, to grasp the meanings, to grasp this the synchronicities and the symbology behind things. That's why the 12th house is so difficult to sort of understand, because it's so much about symbolism and it's so hidden. It is the most, I believe, hidden, you know, that blind spot for us when it comes to our own integration. And this leads me on to this integration, because this is why I believe the 12th house is so important to integrate, because it can help us with these other unconscious houses. Because whenever you come from this intimate relationship and you go to this collective unconscious, you sort of see how there are similarities. You see and you notice how what you're experiencing in your own intimate world, in your own personal world with another person, that is so strongly connected with what everybody else is going through in the collective, that we all go through these things. And so when we can learn to not only just integrate the 12th, but to integrate all of our unconscious houses, planets we have there, signs that rule these houses, they can be really helpful for us to see what is it that maybe you're not aware of, that you can start to assess and analyze within your own life. So paying attention to, for example, your moon sign, okay, so the 4th house things, paying attention to your emotional responses and your emotional reactions to things, your triggers, what triggers you, is a really great way to try and figure out what it is exactly and how you can integrate it. So I'm going to give you an example, right? I'll give you an example from my own life, okay? So I have a Virgo rising. The Leo rules my 12th house. I have Chiron and Leo in my 11th house. Now I'm just going with the Placidus system here, okay? Now, the interesting thing about this is that, of course, Cancer rules my 11th house. And so with Chiron in my 11th in Leo, actually, I noticed for myself from the past few months especially, that my femininity, that my connection with women, it was somehow distorted whenever I was younger. I grew up with three older sisters, and then two brothers came after, and then there was me. So I was a bit of a tomboy growing up and stuff, and I just loved playing with the guys. I was always playing with boys whenever I was younger. My mum told me that I would be over with other kids, other boys basically, rather than girls. So yeah, and also I had a better relationship with my father, I think, in comparison with my mother, just really due to how, well, my mother was going through a lot of her own things. She didn't really have a very easy time of it for a good while, mentally, emotionally. But then my dad, he would take us out a lot. He would play with us, and especially me and him would be really close. However, over the years, I realized that I started to really size myself up in terms of other women. I realized that I was looking at every single woman I saw and comparing myself to every single woman and feeling insecure around every single woman. And then I also went on to form relationships, so I tried to form female relationships, and they just always fell through. I could never properly find those stable, I don't know, I guess it just wasn't really the best whenever I was younger. Now, of course, things are changing for me, and they have been within the past few years. But the point of this, guys, is to highlight that for me, what was unconscious, what I was maybe not aware of, was these insecurities when it came to other women. And, you know, I think I just really had to accept a lot when it came to my sisters and the relationships that I have with them, because I remember saying to my friend that I never really had great relationships with my sisters. Yeah, all these things that I have been addressing within myself, that I've looked at, and I feel that the integration for me is just accepting my own femininity. I'm really starting to see how even just this Leo energy, it's about integrating my confidence, it's integrating my creativity, it's integrating my expression, and being able to initiate and connect and say the thing and be just be myself in whatever version of self I choose to be, you know? So when it comes to even these videos right now, and I've been recording them, they're not scripted or anything, and I love doing my scripted videos. I love going into detail and depth about certain topics in astrology. But with these videos, I'm just expressing myself. I'm saying what I want to say, and that is my integration. It is me really learning consciously to work on those critical thoughts that play in the background, to not listen to them, to not let my own insecurities and doubts and disbelief in me to keep holding me back, to stop me from saying that thing. And I talked about this in another video. So with that in mind, guys, this is what I'm referring to when it comes to this integration, when it comes to the unconscious, and the importance of really addressing your 4th house, your 8th house, your 12th house, also addressing your moon sign, Neptune as well, and Pluto as well. I believe it's good to look at these areas, because the unconscious is, I mean, if you think about it, if 90% of our actions are done unconsciously, then one would assume that to look into these areas within ourselves, and again, to monitor them, you know, so to look into these things would be a really good idea. So with that in mind, I believe it's about putting steps in place for ourselves, so when we look at our chart and we read the information, or we try to make sense of that information for ourselves to see if it resonates, even if it does or it doesn't, it's good to just monitor our own behavior. And that's where awareness comes in, that's where being mindful comes in, and that's where doing things out of our comfort zone comes in as well, where we can try and, yeah, okay, accept that I'm this way, I'm this way, I'm this way, but then, well, I can also do this, I can do that. Let's try this, let's give it a go. Okay? It's scary. It's scary to integrate new things into your own personality that you maybe didn't think were part of you or that you had within you, but you realize that the more you grow, the more you evolve, they just come, you know? It's good to be open, I believe, and even if there are certain qualities that come out of us that maybe it's scary to face it, we don't want to look at it, or maybe it's a part of ourselves that we don't necessarily want to be. So for example, if I am becoming highly jealous, if I feel that, it's still about accepting that, okay, I'm jealous, but I don't have to act on that jealousy, you know? I remember watching this guy who explained jealousy as actually something that can be really beneficial in terms of when you're jealous of someone, you can try to, how do you say, strategize yourself a bit better and try to think of ways, well, how can I now, you know, step up my own game in that way? Not necessarily to try and dominate or whatever, because that's where you kind of come on the verge of envy. So envy would be if you really try to bring that person down and just, you know, destroy them and say, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna be up on top, I'll show you. That's more envy. But jealousy can be a healthy emotion if we use it as a sort of tool, I guess you could say, where we can say, so this is what I can improve, or this is what I can work on, but I still accept me anyway, right? I still accept what I've done so far. It's not diminishing or minimizing the thing you've done or what you've created because you're jealous of what someone else has created, if you know what I mean. It's still appreciating what you've done and saying, that's awesome, like I did that. But you know what? I also appreciate that this other person's done that, and so I can learn from this person. So yeah, when it comes to jealousy, for example, if that comes, it's catching these things. So that's why it's really good to listen to our emotions. It's good to listen to our bodies. It's good to be more intuitive in that regard and really to hone in on what signals, messages are coming in. And I feel like that is a very 12th house thing. It's listening to our inner guide. It's trusting in the unfolding of the plan that God has for us, that the universe has, right? To trust that whenever we are in tune with our higher selves, we listen to that, we let it guide us through life, that wherever it's taking us, wherever it's flowing us to, that we're gonna be okay. You know, this goes back to stepping out of your comfort zone. So this whole self-undoing, this whole transcendence through the 12th house, this whole integration, it's seeing those 12th house things as things that we can bring into our own conscious awareness and embody them in a way that we feel is right for us, and in a way that we trust that it's okay, right? So yeah, these are just my thoughts when it comes to the 12th house in general. And I love learning about the unconscious. I love learning about psychology, and I actually have a psychology reading as part of my services. So if any of you are interested in purchasing a psychology reading, then definitely feel free. But with all that being said, guys, this is just another video of me chatting, expressing. So yeah, thanks for watching as always. Thank you for subscribing, and I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye.